evening. I call the regular meeting of the Ames Area Metropolitan Planning Organization Transportation Policy Committee to order for July 12th, 2022. Good evening, committee members. Thank you for coming. And tonight we have one item on the agenda, which is a hearing for final federal fiscal year 2023-2026 and a resolution approving the final FY 2023-2026 TIP. So John and Kyle, if you have anything you want to introduce or make comments on before we go into the public hearing?
So yeah, the policy committee approved the draft version of this document back in May, and we held a public comment period and a public input session virtually, and we didn't receive any public comments. We did receive some comments from Iowa DOT, and we addressed those in this final version. And yeah, that's pretty much it. More or less the same as the draft from before.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments for staff? Hearing none, declare the public hearing on the final federal fiscal year's FFY 2023 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Plan to be open. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address the Transportation Policy Committee on this document? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed and entertain a motion on resolution approving the final FFY 23 to 26 Transportation Improvement Program.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right. Policy committee comments. Brown, anything tonight?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Rachel? Amber?
No.
Linda?
A quick question for staff since you're here. We've talked previously about the study on the three intersections to the northwest of Ames, the Hayden 190th, 190th, and Carver and Cameron. And I think it was going to be in this fiscal year. Is that correct?
Correct.
So do you have an update on where you are with that study?
Yeah, we sent out the request for proposals about a week ago for that. So that concludes at the end of July, and then we'll go through the selection process to hire a consultant for that.
Okay. Super. Glad to hear that that's going. Thank you. If you're working on that.
Mayor Pop?
Yeah, along those same lines with the federal infrastructure bill, I know there's a lot of pieces to that and different grant areas, including the carbon reduction program that we're still waiting on guidance of how to apply for that. Do you know if anything's been updated with that process yet?
The MPO quarterly meeting with Iowa DOT, they gave us a little bit of initial, but they're still kind of working through it themselves. And I think the idea is the next fiscal year, we'll start to get more information about how that's going to be distributed amongst MPOs and for any sort of federal grant and that kind of thing. So,
Okay.
Yep.
That'd be great if you get any information on that, if you'd pass it.
yeah, we're definitely on the lookout for it.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bill?
Nothing from Boone County.
All right. Very good. All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn?
Second.
All right. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned and thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Yep. Thanks again. Yep.
All right. We'll take a very short break and then we'll go right into the regular city council meeting.
Yeah, this owl's messing with me. I'm getting way too much eye contact.
right, good evening, and call the regular city council meeting for Tuesday, July 12th, 2022 to order. Welcome, everybody. And a short comment. The item number 31, which is that's the one on the Sunset Ridge, right?
31.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to bring to people's attention, if people are here to listen to the discussion regarding I think it's the Hunziker development there on 798 500 Street, that public hearing is going to be continued until July 26th. So I didn't want you sitting through the meeting thinking that was going to be a discussion. All it's going to be is a motion to move that back 2 more weeks. So just out of courtesy, letting you know that the staff and applicant have asked that that be postponed for another 2 weeks. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that and not frustrated when we come to it, and we just move right on to the next item. All right, we're going to start out with 2 proclamations this evening, so I'll get started with those. Andy, you want to join me up here? Or? Why don't you come up here?
Oh,
great.
Better photo op here.
This is Bree from the library. She's also part of our coalition.
Thanks for coming. All right, well, I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and we'll let Andy make some comments. Summer Learning Week. Whereas Summer Learning Week is a time to reflect on the importance of keeping young people learning safe and healthy every summer, ensuring they return to school in the fall ready to succeed in the years ahead. And whereas summer learning programs are proven to maintain and advance students' academic and social emotional growth, keep children safe and healthy during the summer, and send young people back to school ready to learn. And whereas a wide variety of public agencies, community-based organizations, schools, libraries, recreation centers, camps, and businesses in our community contribute to the well-being of youth through the summer programming, and joyful summer learning experiences are a critical component to our collective effort to ensure America's education recovery and that all students heal, grow, and thrive. Therefore, I, John A. Hala, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim the week of July 11th to July 15th, 2022 as Summer Learning Week, and do commend this observance to all of our citizens. I'll introduce Andy, and you'll make some comments. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Hello, my name is Andy Fish. I'm the Education Initiatives Coordinator with the United Way of Story County as of March. For the past 6 years, I have been a public school teacher. Prior to that, I was a manager and site supervisor for several different summer learning programs. And I want to extend my gratitude to John and the City Council for acknowledging Summer Learning Week. Summer slide is the tendency for students, especially those of low-income families, to lose some of the achievement that they have gained over the previous school year. Findings of nearly 40 extensive studies show clear and consistent support that summer slide affects children differently, most notably by socioeconomic status, or SES. All children, regardless of SES, race, ethnicity, or reading level, experience similar patterns of improvement during the school year. However, lower SES children experience a loss of reading achievement during the summer at significantly higher rates than children from higher SES. We see this that by the end of by the end of elementary school, low SES students are almost 3 grades behind their higher SES peers. And summer vacation has been identified as the strongest contributing factor of this achievement gap. By the beginning of high school, summer learning loss among low SES students accounts for almost 2/3 of the achievement gap. But there is good news. We can do something about it. We know how to solve this problem. Summer reading and summer enrichment programs are proven to work. School-based, out-of-school, home-based, and library reading programs have all been shown to slow and even reverse summer learning loss. and children of low SES have been shown to be the ones most benefited by these programs. Schools, parents, librarians, nonprofits, and community members all have the power to close the achievement gap, especially when we work together. So thank you for bringing attention to this important issue with your proclamation. I'm glad that together we can keep kids learning.
All right, the second is Parks and Recreation Month. Keith? Hi. Oh, you're Keith. Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of communities throughout the country, including Ames, Iowa, and whereas Parks and Recreation promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks, and whereas Parks and Recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being, and whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles, and whereas Parks and Recreation programming and education activities are critical to childhood development and increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction, and is fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community and ensures that the ecological beauty of our community and provides a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas Ames recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, therefore I, John A. Haley, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim the month, July 2022, as Parks and Recreation Month. And it's my pleasure to present this to Keith Abram, and he'll make a few comments and introduce the other person.
So thank you, Mayor and City Council and City Manager and staff for your continued support for Parks and Recreation. And no, you may not always hear it from the public and from the residents, but they truly appreciate everything that you do so we can do what they want. So I do have Courtney Court, who's our Recreation Superintendent. So she's going to just share some of the things about the theme this year is We Rise Up for Parks and Recreation. So she's going to touch base on that a little bit. So Courtney?
Yes, thank you. So the theme for this month, for Parks and Recreation Month, is Rise Up, which is a great theme as it really is a call to action for community through service of Parks and Recreation. So to just provide a few examples of that, our most recent Miracle League season that occurred, we had over 6 different service groups throughout the community that partnered with us to be team coaches and sponsors of our teams. And every week throughout the season, we had different organizations from youth school groups to ISU athletics to local businesses come out and serve as buddies within that program to really enrich the experience of our participants through that program. We have various instructors throughout the community that come together every Saturday at the band shell to provide free yoga to the community, as well as different partnerships we're able to develop throughout the entire year to broaden our services. And earlier this year, we had the Reminders event that they came to town and provided different workshops throughout the community to really have a focus on self and positive self-expression through music, dance, and songwriting. So a lot of forms of how the community can get involved. And like he said, thank you, Mayor, City Council, our Parks and Recreation Commission Board, and city management for supporting those initiatives. And we encourage everybody to go out and take part of all of the amenities from 38 parks to year-round facilities to pursue those recreational avenues that we have available to us. So thank you.
John, the mayor today, we're going to hold the closed door session.
All right, I was going to mention too is that Councilwoman Anita Rollins is with us tonight electronically, so we have 5 of our 6 members tonight. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Robert Denson. He's president of Des Moines Area Community College and just a valued partner here in the Ames community. And he is asked to give a short presentation on the state of DMAC. And so, Dr. Denson, thank you for coming, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. The mayor suggested that I should come and do a presentation at least every 20 years. And since I'm starting my 20th year in November, I'm running out of time. I do want to introduce Cheryl Langston, one of the 9 board members of Des Moines Area Community College. Cheryl's been a board member since 2004. Our board spends 100 hours or more every year working with the college to make sure that we're focused on what's the needs of every community within our district are. And also Dr. Larry Evers, who's retired professor of higher education, was my mentor when I was at Iowa State many years ago. So it's great to be here. And I'm going to give you a little fire hose version of what's happening at Des Moines Area Community College. We are in our 56th year. We serve 5,665 square miles throughout central Iowa. I call it the economic sweet spot of the state. We've got 6 campuses and a number of centers, and our goal is to make sure that we're within driving distance of everybody within our area. We're the largest community college in Iowa by far and have been for many, many years. We serve about 36,000 credit students every year, 22,000 non-credit students. So we have students from every county in the state. 97% of our students come from the state of Iowa, and 95% of our students stay in the state after they graduate. A great return on investment for the taxpayers of central Iowa and throughout the state. We do a very large Career Advantage program, which is concurrent enrollment, offering college credit classes to high school students. We do about 15,000 high school students a year. 60 or 70 of them every year will graduate with their 2-year degree from DMAC the same week they graduate from high school. But most of them will leave DMAC leave high school with at least 1 year of college credit. So it's a great savings for them. And it also challenges many of our very sharp young people in their junior, senior year as they move forward. We look at market penetration, which is the percentage of college-age students going on or coming to DMAC. That was in red is market penetration, so not much in 2000. We were doing better in 2010 and even better in 2019. Clearly, we've grown several 100% since the year 2000 as more and more individuals realize the value and the quality that we have at DMAC. As I mentioned, the number of students, we're 56% female, 23% minority, which we're very proud of. We really want to represent central Iowa, and we need to continue to grow our diversity, not only in our student body, but in our faculty and staff. We have 226 degrees, diplomas, and certificates, and you can see our top majors there. 55 to 60% of our students come to us for the first 2 years of a 4-year degree and then go on. Iowa State is our #1 transfer target. In fact, this afternoon, President Winterstein and I signed a brand new admissions partnership program so that we have about 400 students that are DMAC students that are living in the Iowa State dorms. They'll have their own floors there and special services because we know they're going to go to Iowa State after they graduate from DMAC. They get an Iowa State counselor from day one. It is a great partnership program. President Joffrey and I signed it 13 years ago, and we've renewed it now and made it even better, knowing more now about what our students need. Every college in the country loves DMAC students. We track our students when they leave us and go on. They do as well as students who graduate at the 4-year university, graduated with about the same grades in the same time. We're very, very proud of that. We're the only community college in the world that Grinnell articulates with. We got all 3 universities, all the private colleges in the state, and we just articulated with Tuskegee University, the only community college in the Midwest that Tuskegee articulates with. We're in right now the middle of our most comprehensive strategic planning process we've ever done as a college, spending a lot of time on it. This is our SOAP document, strategy on a page, focusing on our stakeholders, our people and innovation, our internal processes, and on stewardship. Again, our goal is to serve every citizen and the businesses and the communities in our district in central Iowa. Our higher level initiatives, which are our major big goals, are diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, we need to do a better job of representing everyone in our district and attracting more diverse populations to DMAC because we need them in the job force. And I know every business in Ames, and we get called by them. They're looking for more workers all the time, and they're all looking to increase the diversity because we know that diverse work teams do better. We're also working on guided pathways, which is a national movement. And what guided pathways does is it makes the path through college easier to understand. So we want students to understand the path, get on the path, stay on the path, and then learn. So nationally, we've got a lot of great data that we need to help our students focus on getting through and not be as complex as we always are. On DEI, I talked about it a little bit. We need to maintain our diversity. 40% of our hires last year were diverse. 33% of our hires so far this year are diverse. We're very proud of that. And we do national searches for all our positions. And so we're getting more and more individuals, very high quality staff members with us. So a few of our college successes, I mentioned the 6 campuses that we have. Probably one of the game changers in education is the State Department of Education came out with a grant 2 years in a row that would fund community colleges to hire college and career transition coordinators. And what these are individuals, they're employed by the community college. We partner with the K-12s, so they'll spend days of the week with the K-12 working with juniors and seniors, a day a week with us. They're not recruiting for DMAC. They're helping students go to college or get into careers, do their FAFSA. 1/3 of high school students across the country do not go on to college after they graduate, and that is a shame. So these individuals are helping those individuals get on the path to get into college or get into the workforce. And of course, Tracy Edwards is our Ames High transition counselor. We've got great counselors throughout our K-12 system, but they're so busy with mental health, discipline, registration, and everything else. They really don't have time to spend with a lot of students on their career planning. So we're able to do that. We got funded for one the first year. We hired 8. We got funded for one in the second year. We've hired 3 more. And we just got a $2 million earmark through the federal government, through Congresswoman Miller Meeks, through Indian Hills. We're going for another one this year. This will be a big deal statewide very soon. We've now got about 30, all the community colleges together have about 30 throughout the state. So we're very excited about that. Dennis Albaugh, his only degree after high school is with DMAC. He's Monsanto's biggest competition, one of the billionaires in the state. This is the night that he and his wife, Susan, gave us a lead $1 million gift on our new Culinary Institute, which was an ugly block building. We've had 37 years of bringing French chefs here to work with our students in January. We send students to France in May to intern in the restaurants over there. It is a beautiful facility on our Ankeny campus. This is the day that Carl Moyer and his wife Penny gave us $1 million lead gift for a new auto tech facility or renovation. We doubled the number of auto techs that we have. It's a beautiful, didn't mean to do that, a beautiful facility with a showroom in the front. We represent more car brands and manufacturers than any other college or university in the state. And soon after we build it, we hold the only statewide high school auto tech competition. Here's 309 kids from all over the state in for the written part of this competition. Then the few that win this come back and compete for very, very good prizes and tools. Our urban campus was the first majority students of color college university in the entire state of Iowa. We're just finishing a $25 million addition down there. On the right of the big DMAC letters is a STEM center. On the left is a student center. This used to be a campus in downtown Des Moines with ugly buildings and lots of parking. We've now got beautiful buildings, and we've created some green space. This is one of the few education sites in the world where you've got enough parking. So we're very excited about it, and it's a true college campus for the 5,000 students we serve down there every year. This is the day we signed an agreement with Mark Nook. UNI offers the last 2 years of a 4-year degree on our urban campus, mostly online right now. They've raised $2.5 million in their foundation, and for low-income students, they will actually buy down our tuition so you can get a 4-year degree, 2 years DMAC, 2 years at UNI at DMAC prices, which is a significant savings. We're very proud of that. Boom, we just finished an $8 million addition to our wellness facility up there. All of our sports are on our Boone campus. After we finished the facility, our basketball team finally won a national championship. They say there's some connection between new building and championships, but that was last year. We came in 3rd in the nation this year, and I've actually got a championship ring that is too big to wear. But it's really cool, and they've done a great job. And again, this year we were third in the nation. On our Carroll campus, we built a $6 million addition with welding, conference space, new office space. Down in the lower left-hand corner is Jim Knott, who's our Boone. He was provost, and now he's a board member from Carroll. I said Boone, but I meant Carroll. He and his wife have been significant donors to the facility, and we named part of it after him and had a great ribbon cutting honoring him and his wife for a great facility that they've helped. When Maytag was sold to Whirlpool, they gave us all the old buildings over in in the Maytag buildings in Newton. We renamed it Legacy Plaza, a beautiful facility that we're now working with the state and the city of Newton and Jasper County to put in market rate housing, a boutique hotel, a restaurant. So it's going to be a great economic addition to the Newton community right on our Newton campus. And again, it's going to be really cool. The derecho went through and knocked down half of the old building on the right, $9 million, but we had good insurance. And I'm a good spokesman for insurance companies. But we've rebuilt it back to historic specs, and we're very excited about it. Politics aside, we try to get every politician we can on our campuses. We've had the Bidens there, of course, Kamala Harris. Joe Biden was on. We give a brass medallion, a presidential seal medallion to every president. I gave one to President Obama, President Trump, and then President Biden. It's just a great way for them to see what we do. Homeland Security in 2011, the TSA came to us, wanted us to develop a Homeland Security program for the screeners in the Des Moines airport. We did 3 courses, put it online. TSA pays their agents to go through it. Did very, very well. In 2017, the head of TSA flies in, summons us down to the airport, tells us there are 80 colleges and universities across the country doing TSA training for their particular airports, but they were so happy with what DMAC was doing that they gave us 36 states, 220 airports, 222,000 agents to train. They went from 80 to 2 vendors for this program, and we got 75% of the country, which was pretty cool until 2019 when they fired the other one. We now have the entire country, all 50 states, 440 airports, 43,000 agents to train, and TSA is so happy with what we're doing that if a TSA agent wants to go on and get their 2-year degree, TSA will pay for it. And not this May, but the May before, we had a graduate from every state in the union. First time ever that we had a graduate from everywhere in the country. This year, we had people drive in from Baltimore, Maryland, and Austin, Texas, just to go through graduation. Both of them were TSA agents. It's a great national contract that we've got, and we're very, very proud of our criminal justice department that runs that program. Iowa State is an unbelievable partner. We created the Iowa Cyber Hub. It's a trademark program, 2+2 in cybersecurity, which is only becoming much more important. And as I mentioned, or may have mentioned earlier, today at 3 o'clock, we signed a new agreement with Iowa State. Iowa State continues to be a significant partner with us. This year, DMAC was designated a National Center of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity. We're the only one in the state of Iowa. Iowa State's got a graduate program that's been nationally recognized. I don't think this had anything to do with the fact that we were breached last summer, but regardless, we got a PhD in cyber attacks. We came through that with flying colors. No data loss, nothing paid because all of our systems work. But that said, we still learned a lot. DMAC runs the senior college for Central Iowa, run out of our continuing education department, just offering classes and programs that adults want to see. Goldman Sachs hired us to be the first statewide vendor of their 10,000 small business program, where we take small businesses from all over the state and we put them through an MBA type program with Babson College out of Boston. That Goldman pays for everything. We just finished our 7th cohort, or we're on our 7th cohort now. So right now we've got over 200 companies that have gone through the program. They get great results as we teach small companies how to do even better, grow their workforce and grow their businesses. Kosovo, if you've not been to Kosovo, you need to go. It's the most pro-American country in the world. I've been there 3 times. We've had a great relationship with them. There's actually a consulate in downtown Des Moines. You walk through the center of Pristina, the capital, Iowa flags everywhere because the Iowa National Guard was instrumental in their independence 18 years ago. So put it on your list. Very affordable, and the people love us, and most of them speak English, so it's been very good. But it is an absolutely beautiful country. And here we got $1 million grant from the Millennium Challenge Corporation out of Washington, D.C., working with Kosovo. They found 28 women, all expenses paid, that came to DMAC for 2 years to learn energy trades. They graduated a year ago this past May, grade point average 3.8, and they're now back in Kosovo working in the energy trade area. So it's been a great relationship. We do a lot with wind and solar. This is Mid-American giving us a nacelle. That's a trainer that we're creating a DMAC energy park for our wind and solar programs. Clearly an emerging industry with lots of need for workforce like everything else. Downtown Des Moines, the Evelyn K. Davis Center for Working Families is modeled after the Annie E. Casey Foundation model. It takes low-income individuals and helps them do whatever they need to do. If they need a suit to get a job, they need to be, they're small business, they need some support. We do a great food truck program. Barry Griswold, who was chairman of the Community Foundation, was a lead. The mural on the side of the building next to our urban campus was done by a DMAC graduate. Jill Wells lives in Indianola. It's just a great facility that serves actually last year served 7,500 individuals. So it does a great job helping people. We want to thank the Iowa legislature. They've been very good in funding us. They give us lots of buckets of money, not literally, but various pockets of money that we use for various purposes. It's called the Economic Development Fund. We've created a lot of short-term programs because many of our students can't spend 2 years before they need to get into a job. So we've developed a lot of short-term programs to help them move forward. Future Ready Iowa Last Dollar Scholarship. There are over 50 different careers where before you have to take out a loan, the state will pay your tuition. In the last 2 years, 2,886 students have drawn down over $7.2 million. It is an amazing program to get into high demand fields in Iowa. So we're very, very proud of that. And the legislature funded it at $13 million a year for 2 years, and they funded it at $23 million this past year. So it's been very successful. I mentioned Dennis Albaugh, unbelievable graduate of DMAX. He has a golf course on the north side of Ankeny. Every year he hosts a golf tournament for our foundation. Every dollar raised goes to scholarships. In 2019, we had a record. We raised $458,000 in one day. Pretty big deal until 2 weeks ago. We raised $480,200 in a one-day tournament, all going to scholarships. In the 7 years that we've been there, we've raised over $4.6 million. So it's a great thing for our students. And again, any dollar given to DMAC Foundation, everything goes to students. All of our administration we cover with other ways, but any dollar given to the foundation goes to help students. The National Science Foundation picked us as one of 13 community colleges in the country to showcase us in our STEM workforce endeavors so that we can become even more successful. And a lot of the grants we get with Iowa State. So we're very excited about this collaboration. We were just picked by New America and the Lumina Foundation. The Lumina Foundation is the most premier foundation in higher education. We're one of 6 community colleges there where they want to showcase what we do in workforce preparation because we've got a lot of great results. And again, it's about sharing and looking for best practices. So we're in a cohort of some of the best colleges in the country. So we're very excited about that and being one of a few. Amazon announced last year that they're going to give a college education to all of their associates that work for them that have been there more than 90 days. We're the first education partner for Amazon in the state of Iowa. Very likely we'll have a DMAC campus in the Amazon facility in Bondurant. They've got over 2,000 people working there, and good for Amazon. Whatever their workers want to go into, they will fund it. So they've been a great partner, and we're looking forward to grow that as we move forward. In November of last year, we got $1 million grant from the state to open up a new vocational career academy in Templeton, Iowa. And it's the governor's goal to put career and technical education within driving distance of every high school student. So we partnered with 4 of the K-12s around Templeton. We bought a building downtown. So it's going to be an exciting resource, not only for the community, but for all those schools. And I mentioned Amazon. Google chose DMAC as one of 2 community colleges in the entire United States to pilot their certificate program on software engineering. It is a cool program because not only will Google pay for the certificate, they give each of the students going through it $5,000 to make sure that the students don't have to work. They want them to focus on this certificate. So Google's been a great partner. And I mentioned our auto tech program. We're in negotiations with Tesla now to be their training site for their workers here in Iowa. In 2016, we were named number 10 on value, and I don't mean number 10 of the 15 community colleges. We were named number 10 of the 1,717 two-year programs in the entire United States based on value. I mean, we work hard to deliver. We've got the highest bond rating of any community college in the state, the lowest property tax levy rate of any community college in the state, and the lowest tuition and fees of any college or university in the state. Because many of our students, money's the issue. So we are affordable. And as I tell everybody, when we go into a partnership, we never need to make money. We just need to break even. And finally, last fall, we're very proud to be that Forbes named DMAC the #1 employer in the state of Iowa. We called them. It's the first time any college or university has ever been the #1 employer in their state. John Deere, our principal, was #4. John Deere was #5. State of Iowa was #6. Iowa State was 9. University of Iowa was 13. You know, who keeps track of numbers? But we're very proud of it. And we know that we're a success because of our employees. And we make sure that they're happy, because right now it's a very competitive market at all levels. And when our average class size is 18 students, our faculty get to know our students and help them be successful. So anyway, our brand is Life's Calling. Our tagline is if it's dreamable, it's doable. Excuse me, it's a good thing it's going now. So marketing brings us down, and I say, I want a billboard. But I said, what it really should say is Life's Calling, answer your darn phone. And that's where it's breaking down. If you know anybody right now that needs to improve their lives, their careers, or just get started, we are the best place to do it. Our price point is unbelievable. Our quality is second to none, and the jobs are waiting. So right now, and again, we're very big on four-year education. Whether you go through career and technical or you go into a 2-year track, most of the companies that hire our students will pay tuition reimbursement to get them their 4-year degree, because our business partners know that that's a great thing to do. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in 20 years. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions?
That's great.
Well, thanks.
Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you for your partnership. The Hunziker Center here, it is the gold standard in college, community college career academies statewide. Although Kirkwood and the others won't admit it, when they developed theirs, they copied our model and copied our agreements. And all the Story County schools were great partners with us. And we just had a board meeting there last night. It is doing very well. And we intend to increase our opportunities. We're working with Mary Greeley. We need nurses. And right now, most of our programs are full. So we've got to expand, but that's what we're here for. So thank you so much.
So you mentioned mental health. How are you, is that becoming more of an issue on campus? I know it's an issue certainly in our communities, an issue on Iowa State campus. You mentioned it in your presentation.
Yes, it is more and more of an issue. We've got a program called Early Alert, where any of our faculty or staff, if they know a student is struggling, there's an electronic form they send into our counseling department. An advisor or counselor is immediately assigned to make contact with that student and then get them in and find out what they need. For a lot of our students, there's a lot of family issues, all kinds of barriers that they have, but most of them are solvable. And we've got a number of emergency funds through our foundation where we can help somebody fix their car or whatever it might be. So we've got licensed counselors on our staff, but we've also got a private firm that we refer to the more serious cases to. It's not terrible, but it's concerning. And we know it makes the difference whether somebody completes or not.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming, and fantastic presentation, and we're proud to be partner with you too. So,
thank you very much.
Cheryl, thank you for coming. Dr. Evers, thank you for coming too. All right, can we move on to consent agenda? Council, does anyone want to pull any item from consent this evening? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve consent.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, can move on to public forum. This is the time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. Ask people to limit their comments to 3 minutes or less, and I have one individual so far that's asked to speak, and that's Richard.
wish I could do everything in my power to make you happy, but you guys won't let me. I think that I'm somewhat of a nudist. I like to wear clothes, but I can't be naked in my own apartment. I want to be naked on public land in the city, and I think there should be a park, something like that, for like City Hall, especially because it's like when that, I don't know, it's like I have a declaration that says we, the undersigned, honor the rights, duties, and responsibilities of those who wear no clothes as a public expression of their right, duties, and responsibilities. And I've asked several of you to sign it, and some of you have. But it's like and I've been diagnosed as being crazy in my life, but I think a lot of people would, I'd be a little bit more considerate if they, were more tolerant of my views on public nudity. You know, it's like I've gone to churches and I've taken off my clothes when that's been spend a day with me, sunrise to sunset, and that the last mayor said she'd have me thrown out of every church in this town. You know, and it's like I don't know. It's like I wasn't raised in a church. You're better than Jesus. You're better than God. You're better than I am. It doesn't take much to be better than me, but Jesus would be the first person in the world to be naked. He was.
Is there anything else, Richard, you want to share tonight? Thank you. Does anybody else want to address council under public forum tonight? All right, we'll close public forum. Moving on to item 25, Fitch Family Indoor Aquatic Center Property Acquisition Update. Keith?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So we're going to give you an update regarding the Fitch Indoor Aquatic Center. Last time we were here was May 10th. Number of things have happened. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce the two individuals to my right. We have Megan Down, who's with Impact 7G and the company she represents. Did the phase 1 and 2 environmental study. They also did the ground penetrating radar, asbestos study, and others. And then to my immediate right is Daniel Cook with the Iowa Dnr. He has been very helpful. We've consulted with the DNR, and he has shared with us regarding the site, contamination, cleanup, all the different things that we may have to do according to DNR regulations. One of the things that Dan also had done was a geophysics survey using the EM31 equipment, which really looked for underground storage tanks in the site of the old gasoline filling station, which thankfully there was none that he did not find. So with Megan and Dan are here to help us. They're not going to do any presentation, but if there are questions, something that Brian and I cannot answer, we'll refer to Dan and Megan for them to answer. So again, since May 10th, the council at that time did direct staff to do some further investigation. We had done some additional soil borings on June 7th, had further conversations with Megan and Impact 7G, with Dan and DNR, and as well as some other experts, throughout the community regarding groundwater flow and so on. So that's what we're going to try to go through tonight, and just give you a greater insight in regards to the all the results that were in the report. We're not going to go through everything. But there obviously will be time for questions at the end if we miss something that you want to ask.
Before we get into the information in the report, I think it's worth just providing a caution to the council and the community members about how we've gone about this process. Obviously, it's been a major priority of the council to build an indoor aquatic facility. That decision about where and how we do that is going to have implications for a long period of time. And so we want to get it right. And it's worth noting that there are literally thousands of pages of documents related to the environmental conditions on the site at 122 North Oak. We've gone through many of them and tried to distill them into an 18-page staff report. So there is a lot of information and detail that didn't make it into that staff report. And that goes the same for the information about the appraisal. Very lengthy documents, policies, procedures, and historical information that, again, gets distilled into that 18-page council report for the city council. So we've tried to explain it as best as we can in that 18-page report. This report should be considered an overview. In the past 2 months, we've had a lot of conversations with various folks. This has been Keith and my main focus for a period of time. And so where we have been told things by other people, we've tried to indicate in the report who said it and what the context was and so forth. There are some complex issues in play here, and so there are some disagreements about how to interpret that information and the conclusions to draw from the data. But I think the one takeaway that you need to have tonight is that it's indisputable that there's contamination at some level on this site. So I say all that to indicate that anybody who wants to take a look at all of the documentation that we have regarding this site is welcome to do so. We'd be more than happy to provide the documents that have historically existed that are available on the DNR's website on their database, or the documents that we've obtained, as we determine whether this is the site for us. So I just wanted to put that out there before we get into the information. Now, Keith is going to try to orient you to visually where the areas of concern are.
So with it, again, this site is 122 North Oak, and this kind of gives you an overhead view of the property. Right now there are two buildings on the site. On the lower right, the southeast corner, there's a conference center that DOT operates, and then to the northwest part of the site is what they call the North Annex. In addition to that, in the northeast corner, there used to be a filling station that used to be operated. Brian's kind of sharing those areas. There used to be a church on the southwest corner. Associated with the church, there was an underground storage tank that was used for oil, most likely. That has been removed and cleaned up, and there are no issues with that at this point. To the north, there was a former coal gasification plant, and that's where a lot of the issues are coming from, is where that was. So that was to the north of North 2nd Street. And then to the east of this property, there was also a former leaking underground storage tank. That has been removed and cleaned up as well. So this just gives you a little bit of the site history for this. So one of the things with this site, you can kind of take a look. We did, as part of the reinvestment district back in January of 21, we did have a conceptual drawing put together, and that's overlaid on this the site. So you can see on the southwest corner is where we're looking at the building. And then initially we had the second story to this building, but council last November did direct staff to do a 1-story building. And then in May, also directed staff to do that as an ad alternate if we move forward with it on this site. To the north is the parking. So you can kind of see that both buildings would be demolished, the ones that are currently existing on the site. So we go to the next slide. When the DOT was looking at purchasing this property, which they did in 1995, in 1994 they did a phase 2 study, which is one of the studies that we did as well. And you can see what they had done is they had 9 borings done on this site, and you can see the different locations of those. Of those 9 samples, if you go to the next slide, you can see only 3 of them, had contamination. All the other samples, there were no exceedances in regards to contamination. So the brown area on this also kind of shows the rough map of area of contamination. And Dan, when he did his EM31 study, he had mentioned as well that basically is similar to what he found in regards to the plume of contamination. So it's also the blue arrows also shows indication of how the groundwater is flowing through the site. So now, then in 2018 to 2020, IPL, Iowa Power and Light, who's responsible for the gold gasification plant at this time, they did some 6 additional monitoring wells, and you can see where they put them, and those are all on DOT property. So again, you can see the 6 different wells. They did additional wells, but only 6 of them were on DOT property. And you can kind of see again, everybody's focusing on that northeast corner. So of those 6, 2 of them had contamination. So MW4 and MW5. So again, now the red again was the phase 2 study that was done in 1994. Then 2018 and 20, MW4 and MW5 also had contamination listed in there. So again, no exceedances in 4 wells. So then move to 2022, based on this information that we were receiving and doing our due diligence and with the phase 1 study that Impact 7G had done, recommended that we do some additional borings. So there are 9 total borings here. So and they're labeled, different. TMW 1, 2, and 3. So they did do a soil boring. They did test the soil, but they also, those 3 tested for groundwater, contamination in the groundwater. The SB ones were more strictly geotech borings. So there what they did is looked at what's the makeup, at what level do we find groundwater, is it sandy, is it clay, is it suitable for building on. So we did do those as well. So of those borings, then 2 of them had contamination. So the TMW1, had contamination in it, and then TMW2. TMW2 is a little bit further outside of that plume. Really, the only contamination that was found in that one was waste oil, whereas the other ones was a lot more petroleum and gasoline-related contaminants. So you can see again. And so then from that, when we came to you on May 10th, one of the things that we were curious about is on TMW1, it had contamination in it, but it didn't show any benzene, whereas a lot of the other samples in that area did have benzene in them, which is a contaminant, a carcinogen, so on. So what we did is we did 4 additional borings, TMW 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then what we also were curious, because there were sumps in the buildings, we wanted to check the sump water to see if some of that contamination was being pulled into those sumps. So we did sump number 1 and 2 in the North Annex, and there were actually 3 sumps in there. One was dry. And then there were 2 sumps in the north or in the conference center, and we decided just to do the south one or the north one. So of those then what we found was TMW4, had contamination, and then that did contain a number of chemicals, and benzene, was detected in there as well. In the sumps, we had, if you go to sump number 3, which is part of the conference center, there was waste oil in that sump, but it's also right next to an elevator, and really Impact 7G felt that the waste oil was coming from the elevator, leaking hydraulic oil, whatever it might be. And sump number 2, with that, there was a called methylene chloride, which is used in paint thinner, paint stripper, and a number of other things. And Impact 7G feels that in that case, it probably came from within the building, because methylene chloride was not detected in any of the other borings that was done. It did not show up in any other groundwater sample that was tested. So again, you can see really that northeast corner, which is what Impact 7G, and we gave all of the Impact 7G reports. We gave that to Dan with the DNR to look at, and they really have concluded that contamination is in that northeast corner of the site. So we go to the next slide. So this is one, and this kind of shows just in regards to the groundwater, and you can see the constituent or contaminant, and the table 5 is with some groundwater. That kind of shows TMW1 and TMW4, and then on table 6, and there's difference between PAHs and VOCs. Now, one of the things that with this site, there are 2 different standards. There is a statewide standard for protected groundwater source, and there's also a statewide standard for non-protected groundwater source. So again, we're showing you both standards regarding TMW1 and TMW4, and there's some difference of opinion whether or not you use the non-protected groundwater source or you use the protected groundwater source, and some of that information was in the report. But the thing of note to look at is the colored boxes, and the colored boxes show you where those samples exceeded the statewide standard for really believe it was for the protected groundwater source. So those numbers, are shown in milligrams per liter. If you move the decimal point over 2 spots to the right, then you would get, or 3 spots, you get parts per billion. So if you look at benzene in TMW4, with that one, if you look at it, 650 parts per billion is what that sample showed. If you look at the statewide standard, for protected groundwater source, it's 5 parts per billion. So when you look at that, the sample was 130 times more than what the statewide standard is. For non-protected groundwater source is 64 parts per billion. So if you use that standard, it's 10 parts per billion, 10 times the statewide standard. So the thing with it, with this, no matter what standard you're looking at, I think the important thing to gather from this information is that there is contamination that is present, and there's a number of different constituents that exceed the statewide standard. So with that, that's kind of just an overview, and we're not showing you all of the different samples from 94 and 90, or 2018 and so on. We just wanted to kind of share that one because that's the most recent. And it does shows a number of constituents that are over the statewide standards. So one of the things that as we go through this, obviously there's some risks associated with this contamination, and mitigating or mediating those risks come at a cost. So one of the things that we really have to look at is human health. And one of the things that in the report, there was some information regarding the cancer risk calculator. And there's some difference of opinion. Impact 7G uses that, although the DNR says that for our site, which is not within the land recycling program, that calculator should not be used. But there is a risk associated with all that contamination. Again, some of them are carcinogen, some of them have they are more of a carcinogen than others. But again, there's no disagreement with the fact that there is contamination in that northeast corner. We should note with that contamination, one of the things that if we dig into an area with contamination and we disturb that soil, we will have to remove that soil and have it treated, contamination taken care of. And that's done through a number of different ways. We're not going to go through that tonight. But one of the things, we do not have to chase the contamination as well. If we don't dig in that northeast corner, we do not need to do anything with that contamination. If we minimally disturb it, which means maybe taking the old parking lot out and we put a new parking lot over the top of it, we really don't have to do a whole lot. But if we're digging trenches in there, we want to put electric lines for light poles within the parking lot, so on. It would need to be tested. It would need to be sampled. And then based on the results, then we would have a course of action with it. And with contaminated soil, remember it's odorous. There is some color. It could be tainted, green, grayish kind of color. But if it has odor, anybody working in the site needs to stop, and then we would need to do things there. Now, some of the other risks, design changes, with the groundwater levels, with the soil composition, footings. We may have to, with the geothermal wells, may have to do double casings. Those come with a cost. The footings, the Stecker and Harmson estimated could be $125,000 extra to do the footings. The double casing wells, again, that's to prevent water from migrating vertically to other water areas. The cost on that versus just a normal system, $367,000. And again, some of these are worst case scenarios. We may have to do them. We may not have to do them. Vapor mitigation system. We're not able to contacted a number of different companies about just a vapor mitigation system. We're not able to get anybody to give us a firm number, on that. So in the report, 54,000 maybe for a vapor barrier. And again, that could be on the low side. It could be a lot higher once we get into that a little more. Special piping, $80-some thousand, because we can't use PVC piping if the benzene is present. We also have construction process changes. We're suggesting, putting in monitoring wells. So somewhere between the northeast corner and where the construction is going to be happening, and we can monitor those wells. And it kind of is that kind of canary in the mine type of situation where we start seeing the contamination in those wells. Then we know that we're going to have to start testing any water that winds up in the construction pit and making sure that we're handling the dewatering aspect of it very well. The dewatering piece, staff from WPC, they reached out to some of their contacts, and they just for purposes of this, to give you an example, the whole building would be roughly about 43,000 square feet. We told them maybe take about half of that 22,000 square feet. Maybe we'd have to dig a 9-foot hole for construction and so on. And again, it's just for this. But if they did that and they had to, so 22,000 square feet, 9-foot hole, if they had to dewater that for 6 months, their cost, if the contamination is above what we could put to the sanitary sewer, that cost is over $600,000. And that doesn't even include labor, electricity, and some other things. So, and then if we have to remove soil, there's obviously trucking and other costs associated with that as well. And then once the building is built, we would want to have some ongoing monitoring, either with vapor inside the building, or have those wells kept in place and be able to tell us if the contamination is going up or not, going down, whatever it might be. So again, there are risks associated with this, contamination. And again, we tried to give you some idea of some of the costs, but we weren't able to get all of that. So one of the things that council is going to have to ask is, what risk are you comfortable with? I think Dan and Megan, if you ask them, can they guarantee if we went in and cleaned up all of the contamination on the site, does that guarantee that there will not be contamination in the future? I think they both would tell you no. It's pretty hard to guarantee that from that aspect. So I don't know if we just want to move into the appraisal. So that just kind of gives you an overview of the site, the contamination, where it is, and some of the risks and mitigation costs associated with it. So Brian's going to jump into the appraisal.
So can we ask questions at this point before we move into the appraisal, or should we just wait till all of it's done?
That'd be appropriate. Go ahead.
So what is the status of this site according to the state DNR?
All the contamination is caused by another party. So that other party for the petroleum products doesn't exist for us to go make them assess the site and possibly clean it up. The good news is the construction for the building is on about as far away as you can get on the lot. The main construction right now would not be impacted by contamination.
And so I appreciate that's sort of a second question, and we're going to be getting to that.
Okay.
My question is different. So I've served the last probably 10 years on the Underground Storage Tank Fund Board, and this site has not been on my radar screen. So I'm curious, what is the status of this site according to the DNR? Is it considered an open site? Has it been given a closing letter? What is the status from the state's perspective?
The sites to the north all have a closure letter. The former petroleum sites on this site, all we could ever find was above ground storage tanks. So it never would have been in the tank fund program. And it was never in our database. It was closed well before any environmental regulations for petroleum sites.
And so I guess I'm confused. So when the DOT did its due diligence, it discovered contamination. Did that trigger any kind of inquiry with the DNR?
We already knew the contamination was there from earlier investigations from the Alliant Energy property to the north. They had already mapped out where the plume was on this property.
So there was not an effort to reopen this site.
The site went through our program. The site to the north, the former coal tar site, it was remediated and went through the monitoring process after the remediation, and then it was closed.
Okay, and I next question I have is, if we were to stay with this site, and maybe this is a question for you, Megan, what do you have a best estimate in terms, not on construction costs, because that's a different piece, but just to remediate the soils, to bring them up to a standard that would be acceptable for the kind of use that we're going to have? We're going to have lots of kids and things. We want the public to feel comfortable with bringing their children to the site. So if we were going to build a warehouse facility, maybe we would think about different standards. But to bring the site to a point where we can tell our community with confidence that the site is safe, maybe the first question is, do you have the ability to give us a recommendation on that range of costs? And if so, you have a sense of what that would be?
Well, me and Keith have kind of worked through that as far as all the mitigation strategies that he mentioned. Soil excavation being a big one, the use of copper versus PVC water lines, et cetera. And, a big part of it is just not disturbing that northeast section of the site. I know when Keith originally sent me the plan for the site, they had a underground stormwater retention basin situated on that portion of the property. And I, asked, is there any way that can be moved? So there's ways around it. And as long as you're not disturbing it, really that's the best case scenario. I mean, Dan, I guess you'd probably agree. If you can avoid it at all costs, that's the best scenario. Otherwise, there are, like Keith mentioned, different mitigation strategies that we can put in place just for that extra level of comfort. As far as a price estimate, we would have to get a lot more detail on that. I think Keith probably has some round figures that he could give you, but I couldn't really give you anything off the top of my head.
So is it fair to assume that the contamination in the northeast corner is going to be static? Or is it possible that changes in water tables and things might cause contamination in that part to migrate to a part of the property that we are using? Is it legitimate to just presume that the contaminated material will stay static forever?
In my opinion, I mean, this manufactured gas plant site was there. I don't even know the years on it, but obviously ages ago. It's that contamination has already been the worst it's ever going to be. From here on out, it's just going to go down through methods of natural attenuation. There's bugs underground that eat petroleum. There's dilution. It'll slowly go down as the years progress. But it's never really going to get worse. Although there is a possibility if you're in there digging around and you disturb a pocket of it that maybe had never been discovered or moved around before. Yeah. But if it's being left alone, I'd say no.
So Tim, maybe, Dan and I had, conversation just in regards to the construction phase, that if we have to, if we dig that trench, on the south end, and because of the sandy soils, sandy seams in there, if we start dewatering and you have that trench, you will have groundwater will flow through that sand quicker, and it'll go to the low spots. So maybe Dan can just touch on that a little bit and share what he had told us previously.
So right now, the site is at static condition. It's equilibrium. The contaminants that are being released to the groundwater today are being destroyed by the microbes and dilution. So the plume is stable. If we could go back there year after year, that plume's probably not going to move that little corner that he showed up in the map, the brown area. But if you dig the foundation for the building, and then the construction company does dewatering, he's lowering the water table. He's changing the static condition, which could bring the dissolved phase contaminants that are in the groundwater to your construction site. And then it might start showing up in the dewater, the pumps that are dewatering the groundwater. At that point, you can't discharge that water anymore without proper permits from the DNR. one of the possibilities is to put it into the sanitary sewer and use the city's NPDS permit to discharge that water legally or properly. But it could no longer go into a storm sewer at that point. The likelihood is low that you're going to move it, but there is a chance you can move the contamination. The geotechnical sampling that they've been doing shows that there is a sand seam at this location, and that's where the contaminated groundwater is found, in that sand seam. And you create a low area, the groundwater is going to flow towards that low area.
I have one final question, and I meant to thank you, Keith, for the very thorough presentation. Most of the things that are presented to us are at a level that a lay person is going to be able to understand. Probably Rachel is the only one up here who has the chemistry background to really understand the technical side of this. But this is a lot of responsibility on the council. And one of the things that I'd like to, if both Megan and Dan could speak to, the community is counting on us to get this right with respect to the health concerns. And am I understanding it correctly that there's a difference of opinion between the DNR and you as the consultant as to the standards of health that we should be trying to monitor? Because we don't have that expertise. And so it's really important that we understand those standards. Could you speak to that?
There is no difference of opinion. The proper standards are the protected groundwater standards, not the non-protected groundwater standards. The non-protected groundwater standards is for a different program that goes through a stringent risk-based review of the site. This site is in our standard rules that doesn't do the risk-based type of assessment. So only the protected groundwater standards are applicable for the work that has been done so far at this property.
And Megan, you're on the same page with that?
Yeah, we generally include both protected groundwater source and non-protected groundwater source statewide standards in all our reports, just for reference. It kind of comes into play when you have drinking water wells present, or in our report we kind of, and I mean it's more for a screening tool for us to give our clients a better idea of where they stand. But the non-protected groundwater source levels, I think, come into play if you were in an actual program, when you are in a bigger community like this, where Ames or Story County has an ordinance where they don't allow just anybody to put in a drinking water well. You have to be, I think, outside of city limits, or if you're near city water, you have to connect to it. You're not allowed to just install a drinking water well because you want to. There's kind of protections like that help against that scenario, if that makes sense.
So that's very helpful. So last question, if I could summarize this, it's your position that clearly we can't eliminate all risk, right? That nobody would say that, but we could go forward with the construction and, if necessary, some remediation and build this facility in an acceptably safe range. So parents feel comfortable bringing their children, because we're doing this in a safe manner. Is that your advice to us?
The technology exists to make this a simple fix to ensure that no one inside that building will be impacted by the contaminants to the north of the building site. So this is done on a regular basis to mitigate this type of contamination, to bring it to a safe level for, we call it residential standards, where someone could live there for the next 70 years and not be exposed above any type of standard.
And Megan, that's your advice as well?
Yeah, with all my meetings with Keith, he has literally thought of every mitigation strategy under the sun and has wanted to include it. He's being very overly safe as far as assessing and mitigating the risk to this site.
Okay, thanks.
Daniel, the residential safe category, that presumes also a basement being constructed in a structure.
That's correct. There are several methods that prevent the contaminated groundwater from impacting the living space or the workspace. We can use physical barriers, special types of plastic that are made to prevent the chemical vapors from coming through it. But one of the easiest ones is a standard radon removal system, that little pumps you put on a residential house to put a negative pressure underneath your basement. They work fantastic for a situation like this to prevent the vapors. You know, it draws them out of the subsurface and exhausts them out above the roof line of the house or the building. So very easy fixes for this, but they all cost money. So.
Any other questions regarding, before we get into the appraisal? Any questions for staff or guests? Anita, any questions?
Perhaps for Keith or Brian, given some of the designs that you've already looked at, I know there was a mention about geothermal and where the water pumps will be that will be filtering the water for the pools. For the pool, well, I guess there are a couple. So is any of that playing a role in your thinking, and if so, in what ways?
Can you ask that again, Anita? So you started talking geothermal and then you started talking filters and.
Right. So I'm asking about both of those. Sorry. So about the geothermal, if that's impacting your thinking in any way, but also the filtration system that you'll have for the water for the various pools that would be in the facility.
So with the geothermal, like I mentioned, earlier, if you just did the regular geothermal, and one of the things in talking with RDG, the architect, they have indicated that we could avoid putting the geothermal wells in the northeast corner, but yet if what Dan was talking about, if you have contaminated groundwater going through those sand seams, depending on where you put your geothermal, you want to prevent the contamination moving vertical up and down those wells. That's why with the double casing that we had suggested or has been suggested as a mitigation strategy, that's why it's been included. In regards to the pool filters, those will be inside the building. They may be in a lower level. They may be at grade. We haven't designed that aspect, but I don't really think that all you're doing with those filters is that the water that fills the pools will come from the tap. All right, basically potable water will fill the pools, and then that water will be treated with chlorine. Let's just say that's the disinfection system that we have, and with UV, we'll have that on those basins as well. And then that water goes through those filters, so it just gets recirculated. So I don't think there's necessarily any impact potentially from vapors coming up through the building into those waters.
I want to mention one more thing on the geothermal. So the architect would work with DNR to determine, where can the wells go in a manner that would or would not require the double casing. So it's pretty straightforward if it did require the double casing. The question is if it's in a spot where DNR says, no, you don't have to have the double casing, is that a risk that we find acceptable? So there may be, it may be a little more complicated. It depends on the council's appetite for risk.
Thank you.
If I could follow, I like Anita's question. If I could follow up on that. So would the filtration system of a normal pool even be relevant for the kind of chemicals? Maybe this is a question, Rachel, but there's a filtration system that's trying to filter out other things, right? would it necessarily filter out the kind of chemicals that we're concerned about?
No, it's really with what the chlorine will do is when you go in, if you go into the pool, you have body oils, you
Right.
have urine, you have a number of different things, that will go into that water. And what the chlorine does is kind of attaches to that, and when it goes to the filters, all that stuff gets filtered out, the body oils and so on. And that's why you have to backwash your filters every so often. But then there's also, bacteria, there's the cryptosporidium, that's a potential. That's where the UV lights, where the water flows through those UV lights, and a lot of that other, the contaminants are killed. All right. So the bacteria and so on. So it's two very different things that the filters for the pool water are filtering versus the contaminants that are out in the site.
And that's what I presume that is. I just didn't want people to have the impression that because we have a filtration system that might have any bearing on the chemicals. And then one more question on
Well,
this.
They won't be in the pool in the first place, though, because that
Right.
water comes from the tap and not from the
But-
nearby groundwater.
But the vapors could come up through the floor. That's our concern, is that
Well, that would go into the air, though, too, not just the pool water.
so I guess and that's sort of leads to my second question. Would there be ways in which we could monitor the conditions within the structure just to make sure that these harmful chemicals aren't present?
Yeah, so that's what Dan was referring to, and it's what with the vapor mitigation system that we talked about when he was saying with the radon mitigation system. So those vapors would come up. There is we call it a manometer that if you have a radon system in your house or
Right.
mitigation system, there's just that pressure thing that tells us if it goes one way or the other, we have an issue. But basically what that does is that's pulling those vapors and exhausting them through the roof. So that's why we would suggest doing that with the vapor barrier and having that mitigation system as part of the building
I
construction.
apologize. I just didn't understand. I understood the mitigation. I didn't understand that there would be a sampling component. So I don't know what the frequency would be. With some reasonable frequency, we would be able to tell what the status is of any vapors in our building. That's an important
That might be a
safeguard.
question that Dan can answer.
How do you correct?
Well,
Right.
What do you do then?
Right.
if the site does become impacted, during construction, you can always test the swimming pool water to see if the chemicals exist in the swimming pool that you're finding underneath the building. The sampling techniques today are so they can see at such a low level of contaminants. You could fill the entire swimming pool, the Olympic-sized swimming pool, with water, and put a quarter of a drop of benzene in that pool, and I could tell you that you put a quarter drop of benzene in that pool. And that's how sensitive the sampling is today. So if it's there, we'll see it.
And if it was there, then what do we do? We built the building, and a year into it, we find chemical. What do we do?
That's what the construction technique that you would use to prevent anything from migrating from the groundwater into the building.
But that's optimistic. We have to think worst case scenario. And if the contamination somehow got into this building, do we shut it down? Are there steps that we can take to make the building safe?
There's steps you can do if the worst case scenario did happen. You could put a series of wells north of the swimming pool and treat the groundwater to get rid of all the benzene before it gets to that building. So you could clean up the site, and then there would be no more benzene under the building to get up into the swimming pool. So if you
Ryan,
hopefully
you
we wouldn't get to that, but
I should point out in our discussions with WPC staff, so if there was a sump pump in the building, as likely there would be one, so the discharge from that, the WPC staff would like us to test that quarterly to make sure that we're not accumulating and then discharging contaminants.
So the question is, how do you react to it? What kind of capital improvement is there afterwards to correct the situation, or what are you ripping up?
Yeah.
That's a question.
And would it make more sense to do that more extensive remediation on the front end rather than rolling the dice and just kick the can down the road and let some other council deal with this? I mean, that's for this group to think
Yes, I was
through.
going to say, these are questions more for us, I think, than
Well, some of
than
them
at
are for
this
them
moment. I mean,
because we can't make these decisions without their input.
Okay, other questions? Ryan?
So since we've entered discussions with the Department of Transportation, they've been very clear that the purchase price for the property will be based upon the appraised value of the property, and that their disposal process requires that we pay at least that appraised value. So because of that, a lot hinges on the quality of that appraisal. And the appraisal was conducted last fall, and we have been reviewing and uncovering and learning quite a lot more about the state of the contamination on the property since the time the appraisal was conducted and a little bit before. So unfortunately, the appraisal does not indicate within it that the status of contamination was considered in determining the appraised value of the property. The appraisal assumes that the site is free and clear of contamination. The appraised value that was arrived at is $2.9 million, as we've previously reported to the council. And we've indicated to you that there would be some costs, again here tonight, to address the contamination and make this a site where we could feasibly put the aquatic center. So knowing those things, we've had some conversations with the DOT staff over the past 2 months to determine whether the existence of the contamination merits an adjustment to the appraisal or an adjustment to the purchase price in some manner. So we've held a series of conversations with the DOT staff, and we've reviewed their policies and so forth. Ultimately, the DOT staff has conveyed from their conversation with the appraiser to DOT staff. The appraiser has indicated that there is no specific mention of the contamination in the appraisal. However, there is an adjustment to the purchase price that is already considered in the appraisal because the two highest cost comparable sales were excluded from the analysis. And that was an adjustment that the appraiser made on the basis that this property is public land and therefore should not have those comparable sales excluded. We cannot find that statement is supported in the appraisal. The reasoning given to exclude those two particular properties was different. The appraisal indicates in writing that the reason for excluding those properties is because they are outliers. It doesn't say anything about public lands. The appraisal doesn't hint anywhere that there's a consideration for contamination or anything like that. The DOT appraisal manual also doesn't define the term public land deduction or credit or something of that nature. So we're really kind of puzzled as to the appraiser's approach here. So the bottom line is that the purchase price for the property will remain $2.9 million according to the DOT. And so the council is going to have to weigh what it wants to do here and whether the contamination issues that we've discussed tonight are something you think we can overcome, or if we need to explore other approaches, or where you want to go from here.
So with that, if we, anything else?
Yeah,
Brian?
and so, yeah, go ahead in summary.
So in summary, so we look at the, next steps. And we talked about these, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but things that, council will need to weigh as it considers the significant decision is, again, the potential health impacts. And again, we have a lot of information that we have shared in the report and what Dan and Megan have shared with you. So what are the potential health impacts to not only our patrons, to our staff, to construction site workers, anybody that's going to be working on this site? Obviously, the potential environmental impacts. We'll be responsible for disposing of any contaminated soil, groundwater that we experience during the construction phase. We've talked about the costs in addition to the $2.9 million that Brian just mentioned. We'll have costs. The city will incur costs, develop plans for handling of contaminants. That we laid out here tonight. Facility will need to incorporate measures to prevent the encroachment of contaminated vapor and groundwater. And unfortunately, it's not possible at this time to know precisely what all those additional costs are. We're giving you some information that we have. We may find, like Brian mentioned earlier, that maybe there's some pockets of things that we find that we didn't know were there. So we just don't know. And then there's impacts of delay. In September of this year, we're looking to the first issuance of bonds, and if the bonds are issued, but the project does not proceed because the property cannot be acquired, the city is subject to arbitrage penalties. So that's something that you need to consider. Delaying the decision may also increase the cost of construction with the volatile environment that we have right now on the construction side. Who knows if construction costs going to continue to go up? Will they even out? Will they go down? Right now, everybody that we've talked to, still in that mindset that they're going to continue to go up. The delay as well. We were hoping that 2024 for an opening of this facility. We're looking at probably 2025 at the earliest. And then DOT administrators did share possibility of grant funding. And we do have a meeting set up, I believe it's July 28th, with DNR officials, DOT officials, and then Steve, Brian, and I will represent the city to look at what type of funding may be available to address, contamination. So really what we're looking for, tonight, we're not asking council to make a decision because this is a lot of information and a lot of discussion, so on. So we are looking at, staff will return on July 26th for direction regarding, offer to buy this property from the DOT. So with that, if there are questions, we'd be glad to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Questions?
So follow up on the appraisal. Where an appraiser is made aware of adverse factors, normally that would require the appraiser to go back and adjust the appraised value. And in this case, the appraiser has represented that they knew about the level of contamination. Am I saying that correctly?
No, at the time, I don't think that we have any evidence that shows that the appraiser knew at the time the appraisal was originally conducted that they considered that they were aware of the environmental contamination. I don't have information to prove that point. The appraiser is now saying that there is a discount applied to the property and that should make it square. That's I guess how I would characterize it. Now you have to understand, we did not have a direct conversation with the appraiser. So the appraiser is talking to DOT staff, who is then talking to Keith, who is then putting it in writing the best we can. So it's difficult for us to
But you do
characterize
have the
exactly
quote from him on the narrative about clean site. Don't you have that in the report?
Yeah, we have what the appraiser
No,
has
he said
indicated
he
in their
assumed it
initial
was
report. Yes.
that he said he assumed it was a clean site
Yes.
in his appraisal.
And so that's sort of what my concern is, that if the appraiser believed it was a clean site and now has been presented information that it's not a clean site, my understanding is the appraiser would have to go back and adjust the number. So to say that, well, there are some other factors we consider, we didn't take the top two properties, that's not a, if that was the case, either it's baked in or it's not. And so if they had no knowledge of, if you believed it was a clean site, I don't care what other properties you compared it to, that should be a factor to prompt a reassessment of this property.
I'm not particularly satisfied with the appraiser's response, or what has been communicated to us is the appraiser's response either. But I don't know that the appraiser is somehow obligated to go back and correct it automatically. I think that depends on whether the client wants to direct the appraiser. But I do not know for certain if there's some sort of a professional code obligation or something like that would require the appraiser to go back and make that adjustment.
And even if that's the case, the fact, and I want to speak as politely as I can, but the fact that the DOT is aware now of the contamination, even if they weren't before, let's just assume they weren't. But the fact that they are now and they're not willing to make an adjustment seems a very heavy-handed approach in negotiations. So our purchase price is going to be 2.9 plus the cost of additional construction costs and remediation. That's how we need to frame this.
Well, I think the DOT believes, in talking to them, again, this has all been told us by a third party, by them. They believe they went back and checked with the appraiser, and the appraiser is telling them that they did make an adjustment. But we're saying it's inconsistent with the written document. We can't find that was made or the justification for it. So we, the DOT officials, believe that it was adjusted for based on what they told us the appraiser said to them that he did. It's just hard to follow. It's complicated.
Is there any avenues for the city to contest the appraisal?
Again, in our discussions with them, the procedure that was established administratively, and I don't believe they have an appeal process like we have for a lot of things.
This is a voluntary sale by the DOT and a voluntary purchase by us.
So their procedure started with them and ends with them, I believe. It doesn't go to the DOT board of directors or whatever it is.
But to Rachel's point, if we paid for an appraiser out of our pocket and provided them with this information, we could provide that to the DOT and say, look, we've got this price, you have your price. Wouldn't that be are they unwilling to even consider that?
I offered to pay for it. I think, they might be. I'm not sure what will happen with the passage of time. I just don't know what will happen now.
And I'm not sure that's an ironclad way to get a deduction on the property.
You'd probably end up with a third opinion then, right?
We're talking about 8 months difference in the timing also of the market, and there may be increases in property values and comparable sales and so forth that have taken place over time. There's risk. It's not guaranteed that even if you take into consideration the contamination and the cost to clean it up, that the appraisal is going to go down based on the $2.9 million. It's going to be a whole new appraisal.
Yeah.
Expect.
I think the point is we've discussed this many times. I think we made all the arguments you're making. I think it's $2.9 million. And you're going to have to decide, do you want to buy it, which is, I think, at the high level of the market, along with assuming some undefined financial obligation on our part. It could be $100,000. It could be $800,000. But that would be all at our risk, and I can't even tell you what it is. I can't even cap it for you right now.
And so we're being asked to think about these things and bring back decisions for the 26th, right?
Correct.
I guess one question I'd and I'm wondering if staff can answer it in the meantime, is have we really exhausted all our other possibilities for locations? I mean, have we really looked at everything that's out there? Because with the additional costs of adding mitigation systems and the disposal of any potential soil and water and you name it, I mean, I'm just really worried about what the costs of this project are going to end up being, especially given the fact that we don't see the property value coming down. So, I know we did look once, but I guess I'm just wondering if, Steve, do you think is that enough time to get?
I think so, but I want to make it very clear. I think our goal is we have dual goals here, and that one is to take advantage of our reinvestment money, which is $10 million.
Right.
So if you're saying open it up to sites throughout the city,
no, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I think
but if you're saying
somewhere within the area.
close enough, because we would have to make the argument, we would have to go back in our application and amend the reinvestment district, right? And so whatever we do, it would have to be in close proximity where we are today.
Okay.
So we could go back and look at that, I think, if you isolate in that area rather than going back and opening up the whole city again.
Yeah. And, I'm not saying I'm sure that's what we want to do, but I just think, given the health risks and the increased cost, it's something that to make sure we've looked at all our options there. So is that something you'd want a motion on then?
Yes, yes.
Is that an okay time? Is it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would move to direct staff to examine any other possibilities for locating this facility within our urban renewal.
Well, it won't be,
What's it called?
it'll be close proximity because we'll have to
Yes.
amend it, but in close proximity.
Close proximity to this.
If we alter that site too much, I'm afraid
Wait, is there a second?
if we alter it too much, I think we might not be able to get the money. So we have to keep it in close proximity, I believe.
Right. The total land area of that district, of the reinvestment district, cannot be greater than 75 acres. And we're right at that now. So if we modify
we slide one way,
we'd have reinvestment district.
we'd have to make do some trims on some sides of the reinvestment district boundary in order to add other.
Look at it, and
and
they
I
might
think
just come back
given
and
the
say, no, there's
increased
not.
cost, like maybe this would have been a fine site given normal costs for the site. Like maybe we would have chosen this, and obviously, right, we would have chosen this site given costs that are
we've now drawn
within
this
our
boundary. Before we were looking all over the city, all over the city for a site. And then we found that the Economic Development Authority liked the downtown site. So we focused on this. Now we created the urban renewal area and the reinvestment district, right? So we're kind of locked into that now. If you say find this site that's close, that will be a short period of time to look around those boundaries. And we weren't focusing on any other place around there when we picked the site. We knew the DOT site was vacant. It was in the downtown. And we focused immediately on that site.
Well, I'm in agreement. I'm very much interested in another site. My question is, just given the few options we have, does staff already have a recommendation as far as other sites?
Well, I think we want to look.
I think
give us a week at least to look at it.
I think that's
and contemplate it.
I think that the motion's been made to staff to look into it, and then at that point, come back with some suggestions or recommendations or a matrix. So, all right, go
For the
ahead.
possibility of grant funding, do we need to make a motion about that, or is staff already planning to try to look
We
into
have a motion on the floor. Let's go ahead and take it. Any other discussion on the motion? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried.
Are
Okay.
you referring to the meeting that we talked about, meeting with DNR and UT? That's relationship to funds that will be available to clean up a site. So we'll still meet with that. Obviously, if we find another site that doesn't need remediation, we won't have to take advantage of it. But we'll learn more about the availability of funds. We need to know the timing of it. Do we have to wait 3 years? Yeah, no, we'll do that anyway. And
And
we
that's-
appreciate the DOT agreeing to try to host that for us, see what's available.
And that's purely an informational meeting. There's no obligations or,
Yep.
we're not committed to anything by just simply having that.
But
meeting.
you'll have
I
to
think it'll
worry
be
about the
scheduled for after
timing,
next council.
the magnitude. Is there a local match? Is there the biggest grant you could get for $10,000? So we'll get all that information for you.
I think one funding or grant funding source, and I don't even know if it's a grant, that Dan had mentioned to me is for asbestos removal. that there is a potential to get something from the DNR for up to $25,000 in a match. Right now there is some asbestos in the North Annex, and we did get a quote for cleanup, which is roughly about $10,000. So it's not a lot in regards to asbestos cleanup, but that is something that Dan said that money is available, right now. And some of the other grants that are available, should mention as well, that some of the other grants, you do have to be involved in some type of cleanup program or land program, which potentially, according to Dan, could, take 1 to 2 years before you could even start building. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, that would be an EPA grant from Region 7 in Kansas City. And it can be up to $500,000 to remediate a contaminated site. But it's a competitive grant, and you have to have a consultant that has done this many times to get your best chance of getting that grant money.
All right. Any closing questions for staff or guests?
Thanks for coming.
All right. Thank you, Megan and Daniel, for coming and being resources tonight. And any closing comments or questions? Otherwise, we're going to move on. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, item number 26, fines for nuisance parties. Chief?
We're here tonight to bring back an ordinance as directed by council from the last council meeting to discuss the increase in fines for nuisance party violations for dates directed by council by resolution. So basically, you'll be deciding what dates you would want to apply this increased fine structure. I'm not sure how much background you want. We've discussed it a little bit already, but as you know, we have begun to have an increase in issues surrounding the Saturday before classes begin with Iowa State University, previously called 801 Day. We are trying to rebrand that event to some better activities, working with the university, ISU Police Department, obviously the Ames Police Department, rebranding that as Cyclone Welcome Weekend. So we're going to try and take the focus away from alcohol events, risky behaviors, parties, all those kind of things, and try and move those towards some other activities that are less risky. I know the university has done a lot of work to try and come up with some events that they think will be popular with students coming in. And I think the idea is just the approach that we want to welcome the students back to Ames for the school year, and let's do that in a responsible and safe way. We've had a number of meetings with the university and talked about a number of strategies that we might be able to use. We've come up with a few that are our responsibility to look into. The university has obviously their list of things that they're working on. One of the things that we discussed was the increase in fines for nuisance party violations. The ordinance already exists, so there already is an ordinance that covers what a nuisance party is. It's believed that that's an insufficient deterrent to parties. $100 is the current first violation or first offense fine, $200 for a second and subsequent. The ordinance would that you're looking at might change those to $750 for first offense and $1,000 for a second or subsequent offense. I know that there was a question at the last council meeting in regards to the way that we enforce currently the nuisance party violation. So again, I just want to reiterate that we don't just show up at a nuisance party and begin writing tickets. There has been a process that we've gone through to educate everybody in that area, the students, during the weeks leading up to the beginning of school. So we actually go door to door with our neighborhood program and explain these are the rules that you're going to want to follow as we start the school year. And one of those is we talk about nuisance parties. So that's kind of the first opportunity to explain what's appropriate, what's not. In addition, When we start to see a party that looks like it's growing beyond what is controllable, then our officers stop out and we talk to them again. So there's usually a contact to give them an opportunity to control the behaviors, get in compliance with the code before we move to the last stage, which is enforcement. So we always try and educate first and enforcement when that doesn't work. And so that's why we're here tonight to bring this ordinance to you. You may have questions.
Questions? All right, I'll open up public input on before we have first passage of ordinance. Is anyone in the audience wants to address council on this topic? Close public input. Entertain motion on first passage of ordinance increasing fines for nuisance parties on certain occasions.
So moved.
Second.
Moved to second. Discussion?
It's unfortunate that the Tribune provided no coverage over this story. We had a very robust discussion. I think we tried our best as a council to weigh different options, and so the public didn't really have any sense of the discussion that we had. It's unfortunate. The Iowa State Daily had a small article about it, and so it's difficult to get public input if we don't let the public know what we're doing. So I'm going to be voting against it for the reasons that I gave in the prior meeting.
Roll call.
Rollins.
Aye.
Poirier.
Aye.
Junk. Nay. Dee Hansen.
Aye.
Burton.
Nay.
Okay, staff, and we talked about this last time, and that is we'd like to consider second and third passage and adoption.
Mayor, it didn't pass.
We need 4.
There were only 3 yes votes, and it takes 4 yes votes to pass an ordinance, according to the Iowa Code.
Okay. All right.
I would move that we adopt. We probably can't. Can we direct you to come back with a lesser fine amount? So 500, say, for a first
Well,
offense?
before there's a motion, let's have a discussion. I mean,
sure.
Actually, the motion failed.
Yeah.
Right.
So to me, it's
failed
like,
because we're missing a council person.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
let's just
Yep,
be
exactly.
honest about
Yeah.
that's why it failed.
So, but Tim, you had mentioned that you thought, maybe that was just too much. Is there a dollar amount that you would send them back? Do you direct them to go back for?
I mean, just to sort of summarize concisely,
Yeah.
Rachel raised, I think, a very interesting question about the composition of the group that came back with the proposal. I'll let you speak to concerns. I thought that was an important addition. My concern was on proportionality, and so I would be willing to support a substantial increase, but not to the point we had.
I know
So
that's what I guess I was
we're sort of
asking you to cut to
negotiating.
the chase and say what that substantial increase would be.
So maybe Mark, could you give us any kind of guidance as far as part of my concern was the issue of parity with respect to other offenses. So can you give us some other options of fines that would be things that we could compare it to?
Well, I don't know what is comparable to a nuisance party. It's sort of a unique.
But in terms of the level of sanction, like what are some other options?
Well, I guess I would just say that the options are whatever you would decide to set them at. I mean, you could go $500 and $750, or you could go $250 and $500. I think the thought of using the maximum that we're allowed by the Iowa Code to use was to create a deterrent effect. But I understand that you think that's excessive. But I mean, I don't have the penalties for all our municipal ordinances in my head. So, no, Jeff, any thoughts?
Yeah, one other thing that you may consider is that this is one of the ordinances that can also be charged as a simple misdemeanor, and that's always been the case. And so in some cases, you could charge this as opposed to a municipal infraction as a simple misdemeanor. So the simple misdemeanor fine could be $650 for the first violation and $8.55 for repeat violations by code.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that you could take into consideration. If it was charged as a simple misdemeanor instead of a municipal infraction, that would be the penalties, which we could do right now.
That seems weird.
We generally don't charge as a simple misdemeanor. We try and keep them as municipal infractions. But it is something that is available to us that we have used in a very few occasions in the past when we've had people that were just absolutely non-compliant. And the only way for us to solve the problem was to go to that extreme.
And that's already in the code?
Yes.
And I think the point of the fines for these nuisance parties was to create a deterrent. I'm scared, or I think if you go much smaller than what the maximum was, I don't know if you've been seeing what's been happening on social media, but people commenting like, oh, we'll just start charging fees to get into our parties to cover these fines. So if you go much smaller, it'll be easier for them to gather that money. So then there won't be that deterrent.
It's just it's just very frustrating that we are sitting here talking about something that we don't want to charge these fines. We're trying to send a strong message, and we're saying between 500 and 750, and we have residents that appeared before this council and complained about inappropriate behavior. They're trying to clean up, and the point is that they're breaking the law. They're breaking ordinances. So let's get a decision. Are you going to change the level of fine, or are you just going to go ahead and move on?
I'll try
I
again,
mean-
unless Tim, you have a
Go ahead.
number, or unless anybody else wants to jump in. But I'd say do we need to move to direct you to bring it back then with?
Well,
with
you'd have to move to reconsider.
I can't.
We can't.
Yeah.
Tim,
That's right,
Tim
Tim
could
or-
perhaps
Tim
if
or-
he were so
Rachel
inclined to
could.
do that.
I wasn't prepared to sort of think through alternatives, and Chief, I think the fact that you have on the criminal side as a comparison, I think that's helpful for us as policymakers. Because, Mayor, it's not just enough that people break the law. We want to find a penalty that's commensurate with that. So we don't make it $10,000 or $20,000. We wanted something that's reasonable. So I guess I would be willing to support a penalty structure that is the same as the criminal side. I think that's a rational way of approaching it. So the 650 and 855 just take a mirror image of those. Those decisions have already been made or on the code. I would feel comfortable staying with those. So I would move to reconsider and at those levels for first and second infractions.
Okay.
Let's
Yeah,
get-
first we just need a motion to reconsider.
Motion reconsiders we need, first of all.
Yeah.
I apologize. We haven't had
Nice
to do this in a
second.
while.
Yeah. that's
Can a loser second a motion to reconsider?
Yes.
Second.
Yes. Anyone can.
Thank you.
We haven't had to do this in a long time.
Right.
No,
right.
we haven't. Roll call.
It's true.
Hi.
Hey.
Aye.
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 Okay. Now we need a motion.
For the simple misdemeanor, what are some other things that can be charged as a simple misdemeanor in our code?
Simple assault, trespass.
Mostly what's in chapter 17.
Yeah, most of chapter 17, which is our miscellaneous.
Just for the
Criminal.
public to kind of know what we're considering the same level of a nuisance
Right.
party
So
as assault.
trespassing.
There's definitely two sides to the charging as a simple misdemeanor versus charging as a municipal infraction. So I think there's kind of two pieces to it. One is the level of proof. I think we talked about that a little bit last time. Is your municipal infraction is preponderance of the evidence, or 51% if you want to think about it that way, where a simple misdemeanor would be beyond a reasonable doubt. But on the other side, you also don't have a criminal record with municipal
Yes,
infraction,
exactly.
so it doesn't weigh the same against you long term. That's why we prefer municipal infractions where it's possible, because we don't want the added penalty of something on your record when it can be handled with a fine. And The goal here of all of this, part of it is deterrence, but we are trying to get voluntary compliance. We want everybody to voluntarily comply with the code. That's the reason we have all of these laws. So just
But
so
we're
that's
not,
said.
I guess I'm under the impression that we're not reconsidering this to charge it as a
Right.
misdemeanor. We're
No.
reconsidering it
It's
to
for the
match
level.
the fines
Correct.
Right.
to what a
Yeah.
misdemeanor is.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
it really doesn't matter what the current
Yeah.
crimes are as a misdemeanor because that's not what we're discussing.
Yeah, I agree.
So someone would have to make a motion to amend the ordinance to change the fine amounts for the municipal infraction. And once that passes, then you can vote on the ordinance.
So I would move that we amend the code for the nuisance party, first offense, make it $650, and subsequent offense, $855.
Second.
Discussion? A roll call or a voice vote?
It's a motion, so a
Yeah.
voice vote.
Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried.
So now we can move on first?
Yeah.
Move on first.
Yep.
Second.
All right. Roll call.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Corey. Aye. You're fine.
Okay.
Move we suspend the rules?
Second.
Roll call.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Entertain motion on second
No.
passage.
Move on second.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Nay.
And entertain motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Nay.
Aye.
Thank you, Mark, for guiding us through that one. All right. Item 27, towing for illegal parking.
So I won't go back through the background because it's the same. But the other thing that has occurred on what we're now going to call Cyclone Welcome Weekend is illegal parking to the point that it's creating a real hazard to public safety. A lot of the streets in the area that we're talking about are parking on one side or the other. That's what the code says. So it's alternate side parking. In many cases on this particular weekend, cars are parked on both sides of many of those streets, making it difficult just to get a regular vehicle down the street in some cases, let alone if an ambulance, fire apparatus was needed. This section would allow the police department to immediately tow illegally parked vehicles in an area that we define on dates and or times that the council will pass a resolution on. So you will direct what dates and times that we use this particular tool of the towing of vehicles. So this would be like a snow route is the way it would operate essentially. We would cite a vehicle for the illegal parking and then direct the towing of that vehicle.
So when this is used, there would be additional signage besides just the normal parking signs to indicate that towing is immediately possible?
Yeah, so if the ordinance passes, what we will do, like we do at football weekends, is we'll put up additional signs on the side of the street that we would actually tow from, and they're usually orange, and we haven't worked out the exact language, but something like illegal parking violators would be towed. Just, we want to make sure that we don't want to tow anybody. We want people, again, to voluntarily comply with the parking code so that we don't have to tow them, but we would put those signs out in the designated areas to make sure there was notice.
And do I recall correctly that there also will be some communication prior to that weekend about parking violations as well, and this illegal towing piece?
Yeah, so just like with the nuisance party, we begin that education as soon as people start moving in around the 1st of August. We start that education process. This will be a part of that process as well if the ordinance passes, to make sure we get that information out, along with a campaign by both the city and the university about all of these things to make sure that we're getting this information out. Social media campaigns, press releases, the things that we normally do, along with our door-to-door campaign that we work with Iowa State University.
Any
Thank
further questions?
I just wanted to comment. Last week I talked about, or not last week, 2 weeks ago, the accessibility of where towed cars would be and if that would be on a side route or accessibility. I appreciate that you looked into that and to see if there was anything that could be done to make it more accessible. It's unfortunate that it's not, but I still think that in this case, safety is going to outweigh the towing concerns. So I'll be in favor of this.
Thank you.
When I spoke to Cyride, they don't have a route that goes all the way down East Lincoln Way. The closest ends at Lincoln Way and Duff, which is probably a half mile or so from CIT where the vehicles would be in their storage.
All right, open up public input. Does anyone want to address council on this item tonight before they take action? Close public input. Entertain a motion on first passage of ordinance allowing towing for legal parking on certain occasions.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Rollins. Aye.
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 Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move to suspend rules.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Entertain motion on second passage of proposed ordinance.
1 second.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 And entertain motion on third passage and adoption of the ordinance.
Move on third.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you, Chief. And you're going to come back next in 2 weeks,
Thank
is
you.
that right? With
the resolutions.
with the
for each of
resolutions
them.
for the dates and also, or the date and the geographic location for parking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 28, third passage and adoption. I entertain a motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4472, rezoning 3005 through 3125 Grove Avenue and 3209 Duff Avenue from residential high density to residential medium density.
Move on third.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Very good. Move on, number 29, hearing on proposed vacate electric easement at 1404 and 1410 Buckeye Avenue.
So moved. I said so moved. Oh.
Oh, yeah. Julie's here. Is there any questions for Julie? I think that your report's well done, Julie. So any questions for Julie? On this item? Anita, any questions for this item?
No, thank you.
All right. Declare a public hearing on the proposal to vacate electric easement at 1404 and 1410 Buckeye Avenue to be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this item? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving vacation of electric easement at 1404 and 1410 Buckeye Avenue.
Move approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Right, and item 30 is the same location. Any questions for staff on the integrated site plan subdivision, or do you have any comments that you wish to make, Julie, on this?
I just would say this is, this report said it's part of that overall redevelopment of the Kmart area. There's a new building under development as well, and then this is still part of that overall site. In the Cyride, there is a condition that Cyride will move to the north. I guess I would say that the condition to 1A on the motion is work with Cyride prior to a building permit. That's a unique condition for us to condition anything on prior to issuance of a building permit, but we just really want to make sure that that gets finalized and it gets where it needs to go, the correct location with Cyride.
So you're saying that the alternative is clear and specific. So if alternative 1A and B is recommended by council, that covers that topic. Is that correct?
Yeah, A covers that the Cyride stop, and B is just in there to make sure that everybody's under the understanding, the developer and the city, that nothing's changing anywhere else on the staff, and all approvals stand as is except for these two addresses.
Okay. Questions for Julie? All right, declare public hearing on integrated site plan subdivision with concurrent final plat and major site development plan amendment for 1404 and 1410 Buckeye Avenue to be open. Anyone want to address council on this item? Hearing none, declare the public hearing on this item to be closed.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just before you have a motion, the agenda says resolution for just the site plan. It's really a resolution for both the final plat and the major site plan, just to be clear that it's both. The title of the item, as you just read it, is right. Alternative 1 is correct. The agenda just left off final plat. That's one of the details.
So I entertain a motion on resolution for alternative 1A and B, if that would be acceptable.
I'm sorry.
I said for the council to.
Alternative 1 is correct, is to approve final plat and major subdivision with a resolution. Alternative 1 is correct.
Right.
That's if that was
All
to
right.
be the motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
The agenda
Discussion.
just isn't listed that way.
It's alternative 1A and B. All right. Roll call.
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you very much. On to item number 31, hearing on rezoning with master plan 798 500 Street from A agricultural to FSRL, which was to be continued to tonight. We need a motion to continue the hearing for the contract rezoning agreement for adoption of the master plan and first passage to July 26th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, moving on to item number 32, proposed amendment to city planning project review and notification process.
Good evening. So we had discussed this a long time ago as part of administrative changes. We did the Chapter 23 subdivision changes about a year ago, and we've been working through the winter to make these changes to Chapter 29. In essence, it's really to the customer, it won't really impact how they interact with staff for the most part. We've been informally taking applications and reviewing things as described in this report from the planning division for a couple of years. But it would make sense to clarify roles, make some adjustments to just make it easier for staff to do this conveniently and not get caught up on little technicalities sometimes when things are a little askew from what you would expect. The other major change here is really for the zoning enforcement officer. There's two roles defined in the zoning ordinance, one for the planning director and one for the zoning enforcement officer. And right now it specifically says who the zoning enforcement officer is someone that reports to the fire chief. In this amendment, it will just solely be a designee of the city manager. So that may be the planning director, it may be a different staff member, but it would then make that just a designee of the city manager based on kind of what staffing is at the time we need to do that. The key component in relation to the planning division is interpretation of the planning of the zoning ordinance is really going to be through the planning director. So now there will no longer be, again, is the customer then working with planning staff for a long period of time and they want a decision or an interpretation, then they have to go communicate with another person in inspections, and then we have to collaborate on what that is. So now we'll just simplify it down to one role, one division. It'll be easier for us to work through. The other little detail there is we have, as part of that function change between zoning enforcement and planning director, we are clarifying right now that for driveway permits in relation to front yard parking, those are now going to be reviewed by the planning director rather than the zoning enforcement officer. So there's no ambiguity then about who is responsible for that. It'll just be the planning division. It won't be a mix again of who's reviewing different permits for driveways. The Zoning Board of Adjustments, the last thing I'll touch on. There's a couple of other changes related to permits and notice and the Planning Commission to kind of bring us all up to where we've been working together. The Zoning Board of Adjustment last year, we had identified that we wanted to simplify the notice process as well as clarify the voting procedures. We went through the review of the notification process with the city attorney's office, and it was determined that we really can't avoid the newspaper publishing requirement. It appears to have zero value for a zoning board of adjustment to tell the whole city what's on an agenda that affects one property. But we can't avoid that, unfortunately, even though that was one of our goals in the process. We are still modifying, again, administrative support roles. Planning division through administrative services is now going to be the secretary to the board. We will be doing the bulk of the work. The city attorney is still involved in the meetings themselves, still writes the decision and orders. And then the city clerk will be the records retention monitor for that as well. But really all of the work with the applicant and how that's all put together and now just be in the planning division rather than split between two divisions. So with that, I think I've hit the highlights of this.
Talk about what would go through P&Z for vote and what wouldn't. Did you explain
Say that again?
What would be voting on, what would review, P&Z would review, and what they won't review?
So from chapter 20, the Planning and Zoning Commission, we did clarify that their role for review of preliminary plats in chapter 23, we took out an archaic section from the 70s that they're supposed to comment on street plans and things that they have never really reviewed for decades. And again, update how comprehensive plans are reviewed. So that article really reviews how their functions are. We have a separate chapter that talks about how the P&Z, what their roles are. And that one's being modified, again, to be in line with how we've been doing things. Which brings up one other thing. The other new application type is to include annexations in Chapter 29. You've obviously been ruling on annexations for a long time. It's been through a policy rather than through an ordinance. So when we've been coming to you, there's a policy of how to bring it to you to initiate an application, and then we customarily ask you to tell us what to do next. So let's just put that in an ordinance, make it clear how the steps will progress. What we've asked for what we've put in the code is just the initiation process. We're not duplicating state law. Once you start the process, we're going to follow state law. The one exception is, by custom, Ames has always involved the Planning and Zoning Commission in the review of annexations. And that would be that recommendation that comes out of the council when we initiate one. What staff is proposing is to codify the P&Z's role, but to have it only apply to an 80-20 annexation. So the 80-20 is when you have a partially consenting, partially non-consenting. So it's a little more of a public input process because people are being asked to participate in something that they may not be interested in. And it's a public hearing then to kind of walk through what those expectations are. We think that the regular 100% voluntary annexations are pretty straightforward. We probably don't need a public hearing to confirm 100% voluntary annexation is compliant with city goals. So we're asking that only 80-20s go to the commission. Other annexations would go through the regular state process and it'd come back to the city council for approval without a P&Z recommendation. So that's the new section that's not in the code, but reflects council policy with that one change.
Kelly, the material in front of us indicates that this would be effective after its passage and publication. Are there any possibilities of unintended consequences from a timing perspective for projects that are already in process that you would want us to consider? So I understand prospectively, but what about projects that are already in the pipeline?
I'm just trying to think through what any trickle-down effects are from this. We don't have any pending annexations, so that doesn't change anything. And zoning board of adjustment, that's on a 2-week cycle of notice and getting on agendas. That's not going to affect anybody, again, because how you're going to the zoning board of adjustment now is really the same. This just kind of clarifies roles internally, so there's no interpretations there. I don't really see any customers being hung up by anything because no real standard is being adjusted. It's all procedure. So I don't think anybody gets caught with they think they can do something, but they won't in 3 weeks be able to do something.
Okay.
Nor do I think the process is being elongated and having to do something else that they weren't already expecting.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Anita, any questions on this one?
And perhaps you answered this, and I apologize if I had missed it in your comments, but just looking on page 4 about the one dissenting vote that you had, and this sign posting requirement, and I saw a little bit of language about that on page 3 also. Would you say a little bit about how that was addressed that ended up having everybody feel that this was an appropriate change?
So what we're
I
specific.
hope that was clear.
Nope, absolutely. I know exactly what we're talking about. So in the draft ordinance in section 29-1500, which is where we talk about our notice process, we have 3 types of notice in the zoning ordinance. You have publication in the newspaper, which is a state defined standard. And then we locally have adopted a mailing requirement, which is a 200-foot notice to property owners. Then we have a third one, which is a posting of a sign on a property. So one of there was already some language that talked about if the sign isn't posted or it doesn't stay there, it can be found to still be compliant in essence with the notification process. So we wanted to clarify and add in the statement that the absence of a sign doesn't void all of the other notice processes. And we're putting it at a section above, which is a list of things that are considered compliant because it was your best effort, such as we sent them notice by mail to the person that was listed in the assessor's records, even if that person isn't actually the owner of the property, some of those kinds of things. Sometimes signs are gone. What I think really tripped up the Planning and Zoning Commission was my example of it's possible to have more properties subject to an application than we may possess signs for if there's multiple hearings happening at the same time. And we're also clarifying that requirement in here too, because it used to say per property, which we have never done. It's been per site is how that's been applied. So they were concerned that we were inventing a way to get out of posting signs. I said, no, my obligation is to post a sign. What this is doing is clarifying if for some reason that's not feasible to be done, that the commission or the council could still find that we've substantially complied with the intent because of the other notice requirements. So that was the main discussion, was really, should we clearly say that absence of a sign may be okay, or should it just not be addressed and go through that more vague assessment process that was already in the code? So I think eventually the commission understood. They voted 5-1. They understood the intent here, and they were on board with my examples of when it could be a problem. It's not to avoid in any one week that, oh, we just don't want to go out on Friday and set up a sign. That wasn't what we were intending to do at all.
Thank you.
All right. Declare a public hearing on proposed amendment to the city's planning project review and notification process and approval process related to chapters 20 and 29 of the Ames Municipal Code to be open. Anyone want to address council on this topic?
There was a sign posted on my apartment building about a month ago saying there was a hearing. What was it? There wasn't a hearing, but it said there was a zoning ordinance being considered. And I went down to Hunsaker the next work day. It posted at 5 o'clock on Friday evening. And I went down to Hunsaker. The next day was Monday was our holiday, June 19th or whatever it was. And I went down there on Tuesday, and Hunsaker didn't even know anything about it. Which is like, I don't think there was anything in the ordinance that was being addressed that I objected to or anything. But it's like that Hunsaker didn't even know about it. And they were the ones, when I talked to Kelly, that said they were the ones that supported the thing.
Thank you, Richard. Anybody else? Right, declare public hearing to be closed. Entertain motion on first passage of ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Anything else? Kelly, on this one? You're good?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to item number 33, hearing a proposed granting of underground electric utility easement on the Prairie View Industrial Lift Station site at 207 South Teller Avenue to Interstate Power and Light Company, Align Energy. Declare public hearing on this item to be open. Does anyone want to address council on this topic? Hearing none. Declare public hearing to be closed. Any questions, staff or council for staff? Entertain motion on resolution granting the easement to Interstate Power and Light Company, Alliant Energy.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 34. Damien?
Thank you. So this item, as the report says, we did the report of bids and final plans and specifications back here on June 28th. Of course, the bids came in, the lowest bid was 18%, essentially over our budget, which was around $600,000. So from the June 28th meeting until tonight, staff went and we looked at potential ways to fund that shortfall. And you can see essentially alternative one, or the option one, what made most sense to us was use the funding from this current fiscal year essentially as a way to backfill, and then we will have to reprogram phases 3 through 6 of the ITS program. The program itself, we expected at some point when you have a 6-year program that at some point you have to make adjustments. Obviously, the increased construction costs accelerated that need for an adjustment, but we have the funding for it, and it seemed the most straightforward way to do it. So unless there's any other questions about the other options, B through, I think it was E, I can answer any questions on those, but really we're looking at using the existing programs funding from this fiscal year.
And you got some additional funding, didn't you, for this recently? Is that right? Or
well, we have 2 grants, 2 ICAP grants, and that's the only funding that we had. One of the options when we talked, because we did speak to the DOT about potentially using other state grant programs, but since the project had already been let, we can't access any other grant programs without rebidding. And if we rebid, as you can see, the next highest bidder is about 60% over what we expected the budget to be. So that's why we're not recommending that we rebid to try and access what would be only $400,000 additional, where you kind of our risk exposure, if you want to think about it that way, is like $2 million. But what we will do, I can tell council that we will do when we look at phases 3 through 6, we'll have, before that, it was kind of a consultant's speculation on the market prices for these things. Now we have current bid prices. So when we do phases 3 through 6 and apply for the grants respective to them, we can adjust budgets to try and catch up to the market increases.
And is this shortfall going to slow down the coming over bid? Is it going to reduce some of the stuff that you wanted to do from a planning wise, or we're on schedule?
No, well, I mean, the only delay will be 1 year essentially before you think about it. We'll lose another construction season to try and start phase 3. But before we had put the project out for bid, any kind of extras beyond what we need to be able to use this ITS network for, we had already tried to trim the fat before we actually put it out to bid. So everything that we need is in this project.
Okay. Any other questions for Damien? All right. Open up public comment. Does anyone want to address council on this item before they take action? Close public input. Entertain a motion on resolution awarding the contract to Von Mannen Electric Incorporated of Newton, Iowa for the 2021 and 2021-22 Intelligent Transportation System Program, phases 1 and 2, in the amount of $3,800,582.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 I entertain a motion on resolution approving the use of local funding from FY 2022-2023 Intelligent Transportation System Program to cover the funding shortfall for phases 1 and 2.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 And entertain a motion and directing staff to reprogram phases 3 to 6 in the FY 2024 through 2029 capital improvement plan.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. All right. Thank you, Damian. Moving on, disposition of communications to council. There are 3 items. Actually, item 3 was talked about already by Rachel. Thank you for bringing that up. Item number 1, email from Bill Haas announcing availability of T-Mobile wireless high-speed home internet in Ames. So that's just for council information. And then item 2, letter from John Gady, project manager with Strand Associates, regarding a request to waive subdivision approval authority regarding a proposed plat of survey northeast corner of West 190th Street and Grand Avenue.
A memo.
Memo. Is there a motion for a memo?
Move for memo.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, moving on to council comments. Tim?
Nothing tonight.
Amber?
Nothing for me.
Rachel?
Nothing for me.
All right. And I don't have any comments tonight either. The closed session, item number 35 has been pulled by staff. They're still in negotiations regarding that. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you.